Hello everyone, it's Kathy and welcome back here on my YouTube channel, Kathy's Random Acts of Stampin'. I'm Kathy Champion and I welcome you here into my craft room. Today I'm doing another installment in my series called I Didn't Know I Needed to Know That. This is a question that I get asked quite often, is explain to me about the inks. I think the inks are probably one of the hardest things for us as crafters to really understand. Why are there so many? Is there a difference in the inks? What does one do versus the other one? Today I'm going to try to break it all down and I'm going to show you what I have found that works for me and how each of these inks work. When I first started paper crafting, I didn't have a clue. And so I thought that this would be a very good lesson for all of us, and maybe even a refresher for those of us that are seasoned crafters that maybe only use one or two types of ink in our crafting. Okay, all four of these inks Stampin' Up carries. Now I am going to tell you that the Stampin' pads, all of our regular Stampin' Up ink pads like this, are all dye inks. It's the same as Memento, no different. Absolutely the same type of ink. This is the black that we choose to use. That is our black ink. Now there is another black ink that I love, but Stampin' Up doesn't carry it, and y'all have seen me use it quite often, and it's the VersaFine. What I like about VersaFine is you can use any type of water-based markers with this. It is a pigment ink. Let me explain the difference between, let's set these two aside and let's just talk about pigment versus dye. A dye ink does this. It dyes the paper the color of the ink. So it goes down into the fibers of the paper. By it doing that, dyeing the paper, when you use alcohol markers with it, it doesn't move. It stays. But because it's a water-based ink, if you use water-based markers with this, it will smear, and I'll show you that in just a moment. On the other hand, the VersaFine, which is a pigment ink, it actually sits on top of the paper. It makes an impression that is slightly raised. You would almost need a microscope to see the raised area, but it doesn't dye the paper. The ink image sits on top of the paper. Once it's dry, it can be moved with alcohol, but it cannot be moved with water. Okay? That's why when I'm doing any type of watercoloring, I prefer to stamp in VersaFine ink. Stampin' Up, because they don't carry this, they recommend StazOn. I'm not a fan of StazOn, but it does have its place in our crafting journey, our crafting stash, so to speak. This is a solvent ink. This ink is made to go on non-porous surfaces, and you might say, what is that? Plastic. Anything that doesn't absorb the ink, non-porous. Glass, acetate, vellum. These are all things that if you stamp any of these inks on, it's going to smear. And once it smears, it's going to make a mess. So that's when I use StazOn. If I need to stamp on acetate or vellum, the Stampin' Up vellum. There are some vellums that will take other types of ink, but they're not as clear vellum. They look more like a very lightweight paper rather than vellum. They are called vellum though. Okay, Versamark. This is a water stamp. Now y'all have seen me use this. This is a clear ink that is sticky, and we use it for two reasons. One is for our heat embossing, where we use the embossing powder over it. We melt it. It's a beautiful, beautiful technique. I love to heat emboss. Y'all know that if you watched any of my videos. Now, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to start out with VersaFine, since this is one we don't carry. I'm going to stamp an image, and I'm going to do this just on plain scrap of white cardstock. And let's just grab a little I'm going to grab this little image right here, and I'm just going to grab that little hamster or chipmunk. I think it would be a hamster. And I'm going to show you, let me put this back in here. Definitely like to keep my little papers over my... I'm going to show you how it works. I'm going to pick up my little critter, and I'm going to ink him up. Now, I love the VersaFine ink because I'm going to tell you, nothing will give you as nice and black image as... I'm going to zoom you in a little bit. Look at that image. Now I'm gonna clean my stamp, and then I'm gonna do the same image with the memento, and I'm gonna show you the difference. You do get a much deeper and darker image with the VersaFine, and that's why I love it. But I'm gonna show you the difference. Well, you know what? I think I went a little too zealous on that. Let's clean that again. I just re-inked this one, so it's going to be pretty dark. Alright, I'm going to bring that up to the camera. And you can see this one here is much more vibrant in the darkness than this one. Now, this is an older VersaFine ink pad, and this memento was just re-inked. But you still can see the difference. Now, let me show you. I'm going to write up here at the top, or at the bottom. I'm going to put an M for memento and a VF for VersaFine. I think that's good enough for us to know the difference. I'm going to show you, if I bring in my crumb cake, and we stamped this one first, so it's had time to dry, and I'm even going to fan it a little bit like that. And I'm going to come in with my light crumb cake, and I'm just going to start coloring. Now, it won't take long into coloring this that you'll start to see your image get a little muddy. It will just start to drag that darker ink into the rest of your image. Now, I'm just going to go over him really good, and then I'm going to go back with my dark and give him a little definition. So we're going to do a little bit in his ear, a little bit around here. And you can already start to see the bleed. See what I mean? The bleed is starting. It's just not a pretty look to me. So I'm going to come back in now, because this is normally what I would do. I'll come back in and we're going to blend that ink. And this is using the brown. Now, you can imagine how it would be if you use pink, but see how it's starting to look muddy? That's what happens with VersaFine and any type of alcohol marker. Stampin' Blends are alcohol-based markers. Alright, let's come over here to our memento side, and I'm going to come in with my light. We're going to do the same thing that we did before. I'm going to come in with my light, and we're going to color him in, and I'm doing the same technique I did on the other one, no different. And you can see we're not getting that bleed on this one. See how the other one is looking? As the ink dries, it starts to move. I'm going to come in with my darker, and I want to come in and give him a little darkness right through here. Maybe his belly. Maybe his little feet up here in his ears. And then we'll come back. Let's do a little bit right here and under his little area there. And we'll dot his eyes. And then we'll blend it using this one. Now can you see the difference? This is what I'm talking about, the bleed versus the memento. Now I'm going to stamp the memento again. And we're going to stamp him right here. And I'm going to clean it because I don't want any of the verse. This time we're going to have memento here. And we'll have VersaFine over here. And I'm going to show you the opposite that happens. Okay. So that was our memento. So now we're going to grab our VersaFine. And stamp him right here. Okay. And now I'm going to grab my water-based markers. These are the Stampin' Right markers. These are your water base. And I'm going to grab Sahara Sand and Crumb Cake. This will give us, no, that's Gray Granite. That's not Crumb Cake. Let's find our Crumb Cake. You know, I really don't think it's going to matter. This is Crumb Cake. Yeah. Alright, we're going to use this on the memento. And I'm going to show you what happens with memento. Memento, because it is a water-based ink, your water is going to move it. So this one's going to get muddy from the water base, but this one is going to be beautiful because VersaFine, water doesn't move it. So and I'm going to, on my PDF tutorial, I'm going to make you a little cheat sheet that will tell you what inks to use with what markers, what products, so that you can have an informed, you can be an informed consumer with whatever ink that you need for your particular projects. But you can see, as this one starts to dry, it's starting to move a little bit. This one not so much. So let's come in with the Sahara Sand, and let's like that. Now if I came back over here and wanted to do Sahara Sand here, make his middle right here a little bit, you can tell that this one is much more muddier than this one, just like that one was more muddy than this one. So alcohol with memento, water with VersaFine. That's my first illustration. Let me zoom y'all back out. Alright, I'm going to put my markers away. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll just lay everything over there. Let me clean my stamp block. I may go in and get a different one. Let's open up our Stampin' Scrub and clean that off. Now the VersaFine ink stains your stamps a little bit more than your memento. Again, it's because you can't clean them with just water. You will need to use, with the VersaFine, you will need to use a cleaning solution. But I'm here to tell you, it's not as bad as it is with StazOn. Now StazOn will do the same thing. You can use your water-based markers with it and it won't move. But I don't use this for that. I always use my VersaFine if I'm going to do any type of watercoloring, because I won't get this. And if I'm going to use alcohol markers, I will use my Memento because I won't get this. So that is a rule of thumb. Now you might say, well, what about your classic stamping pad? Again, this works just like Memento. So you can stamp and color with alcohol markers with this, but you can't do any water-based coloring with this. So if you're going to stamp an image in black, use a VersaFine or your StazOn, and then use this, open it up, and ink up either a stamp block, or you can, you know, press your ink pad into the lid. I've got several that I've done that with. I haven't this one, but you can press into the lid, pick up a little color, use your color, your watercolor pen. I say that and I don't have a watercolor pen right here, but your watercolor pens will work really good for that. So that's another way to do that. Now let me show you, of course, you know the Versamark. You can do on a colored cardstock, and let me grab a piece that will show good. I think this little piece will work. This is actually a little square that I cut out from something. I'm going to do my Versamark. This is that water-based ink, and we can stamp him down and see what you get. You get that beautiful watermark, and you can always see this on colored cardstock. You can't see it on white cardstock because it's clear. It is a clear watermark ink. But what this will do is, I got a little bleed over right there. You can actually sprinkle some embossing powder on this now and make it white. You can make it gold, you can make it silver, whatever color embossing powders you have, you can now emboss this and then heat set it using a heat tool like this. This is Stampin' Up's heat tool. There are a lot of different brands. You might have a different brand of heat tool. It doesn't matter. Blow dryers do not work. I've had people ask me, well, why can't I just use my blow dryer? They do not get hot enough to melt your embossing powder. So, but if you wanted to just stamp some images on a piece of cardstock for like a tone on tone, this works for that, because see how the color looks? It looks purple here. So that's the way I use my Versamark ink, either for a watermark where I just show the image as a tone on tone, or either to heat emboss. This image right here, that was actually heat set with white embossing powder. So I stamped it in Versamark, my thank you, and then I used white embossing powder over it, tapped it off, and then heat set it. So now that's on there. You can feel it, it's raised up. So that's another way to do that. All right, let's clean our stamp one more time. And we're going to stamp our little image this time, and we're going to do it in the StazOn, and I'm going to show you what I mean about non-porous. Let's grab a piece of acetate. These are the sheets of acetate that come in on the stamp sheets, the stamp things. I am going to wipe this off before I use it, because sometimes these are a little gritty, not gritty, but you know, maybe a little dirty. So I'm going to wipe it off really good, and then I'm going to just fan it to blow dry it, or to get it dry. So once this gets good and dry, then we're going to stamp on it with all three inks. We're going to do StazOn, we're going to do VersaFine, and we're going to do Memento. I'm not going to do the Versamark because I don't think that acetate will take the heating of our heat gun without really warping. So we're not going to do it on that. I do want to do it on a piece of, let's see if I can set that right there to dry just for a minute. While that's drying, I'm going to grab a piece of vellum. There's a little piece of vellum. So again, your Memento is not a good ink for your vellum. See, it already looks a little wonky. Let's clean our stamp. Oh, I'll tell you what, let's try the I'm gonna have to dry this because it's not drying on its own. I'm just gonna take a little tissue paper and wipe this off. I don't want to get lint on it, but I don't want it to be wet with alcohol either. All right, so I'm just gonna stamp up here in the top corner because I'll probably cut this away. This is our memento. And you can already see how that looks. That doesn't look so hot. It's not meant for a non-porous like either of these. And I'm going to give it time enough to dry. I'm going to go ahead and work this one off over here. While those are drying, let's bring our stamp cleaner back out. Now I do want to tell you, whenever you use the Stays-On ink, you're going to need to use a special cleaner. And I have a Stays-On cleaner, but I'm here to tell you, when you use it, your stamp is going to be stained. So be prepared for that. You can still clean it and it will be clean, but it will be stained. Let me grab my Stays-On. What did I do with it? I thought it was right there. Nope, that's the Zig glue. All right, let me look over here. Maybe I left, maybe it's over here on my other, it is. This is the Stays-On cleaner. And you will definitely, if you're going to use Stays-On, if you order a Stays-On ink pad, I recommend that you get one of these too. And it says Stays-On cleaner right there. And of course it's in other languages all the way around the bottle, but this is what you're going to need if you're working with the Stays-On. Now the Stays-On, being a solvent ink, it has this little plastic, and I put glue dots in the top so that it would lift off when I lifted off my top. I'm going to ink it up. I'm going to look at my image, and I'm going to stamp him down right there. And it smells so good. It smells like almonds. All right, I'm going to move that over, and let's use our vellum, and we're going to do so cute. And then I want to do one other one. We're going to do the Versamark, the VersaFine, I'm sorry, the VersaFine on these as well. Now what I want to do, since I use that, I'm going to open up this and I'm going to put this all over my stamp, close that up, bring my stamp cleaner back over here. I have nowhere to sit it because I don't want to smear that ink, but this is my stamp cleaner, and I am going to really give this a scrubbing. Now if you do it really quick and don't let it sit on your stamp, you can get it pretty well clean. But if you leave it for, I mean, a New York minute, it will definitely stain your stamp. All right, let's do our VersaFine. So let's write on here, this is Stays-On, this is Memento, and this is going to be VersaFine. You can't mark on that because there's no way. Oh, I guess I could if I did a Sharpie. Let's do, again, look how crisp that image is in the VersaFine. Of all of these, you can see which one is the most crisp image. Maybe I need to put it on white. Let's lay it on this envelope. Yeah, you can definitely tell it there. Memento, Stays-On, and VersaFine. Now, I don't think that the VersaFine will dry on there. I know that the Stays-On will. We're going to put that to the test in just a minute. I'm going to move this over here. I don't want to bump it. I'm going to come back over and we're going to stamp this this little hamster over here. And that is Memento, Stays-On, and just like we have here. So we have all three of them stamped down in the same direction. Memento, StaysOn, and VersaFine. Alright, here goes our test. Memento smears. Memento smears. VersaFine smears. Sorry about that. I need a clean finger before I go in to my StaysOn. Now here's my StaysOn. No smear. No smear whatsoever. It is on there, it's not going anywhere. So that's the kind of ink you need if you need to stamp on acetate, plastic, glass, any non-porous surface. It doesn't smear on this one. Now I didn't try the VersaFine on here. It smears. The only one that did not smear was the StaysOn. So that just goes to show that you do need a variety of inks in your craft room. Each ink does a different job. Now I can take this and wipe this off, and that will come right off of there because it's just not there. It was sitting on top of the surface. It would not dry. It would not adhere. So the rule of thumb is non-porous, such as vellum, any type of plastic, glass, acetate. You're going to need StaysOn. StaysOn works every time like a charm. The other two actually smeared off, but that one is there. It's not going anywhere. Here's our vellum. StaysOn doesn't smear a bit, but your VersaFine and your Memento smeared. Here is our alcohol markers versus water-based markers. VersaFine with alcohol, Memento with alcohol, Memento with water, and Versamark with water. So these down here were done with water. These were done with alcohol. I can't spell alcohol evidently, but anyway, there is your VersaFine with alcohol. You do not want to use VersaFine and any of your Stampin' Blends or any alcohol marker. Memento, yes. So let's bring our inks all back over and let's see what we decided. Alright, there are our inks. Let's pull everything down so we can see them. Maybe I need to zoom out just a little bit. But we do not want to use water-based markers with water-based inks. Memento and your stamping, your classic stamping pads. You can use water-based with VersaFine or StaysOn. You cannot use VersaFine for any type of plastic, acetate, glass, any non-porous surface. You need to use this. Ink embossing, heat embossing or watermark, Versamark ink. So there is our lesson today on our different types of ink and what works with what. So I hope that this video has been helpful for all of you that struggle with your inks. I think I just need to zoom out a little bit. I hope that this has been most helpful to all of you that struggle with what ink to use with what medium. I am hoping that this has helped clear up any of your confusion as to what works and what doesn't work. This is a clear-cut illustration of what ink to use where and what ink not to use where. So thanks so much for tuning in. Please leave me a comment and let me know what you think of the little exercise that we did today and if this was helpful for you. God bless and keep you, and as I always say in closing, let everything that you do and say bring glory to our Father in heaven. He is worthy. Until we craft again, God bless and keep you. Bye-bye.